Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejan Sarowick. Sejan?
Hi, Devin.
Hi,
I'm sorry.
Sejan!
I am in a YouTube hole. You have dug open a hole and thrown me in it. A dugout, if you will.
Well, that's good. While you're in your hole, I'd like to tell you the story of how I met your Devon.
Oh, yeah. So I didn't know where we were going to start first. You've thrown so many things at me this week. Literally, the second we stopped recording last week, you started throwing things at me that we needed to talk about this week.
Because last week's episode, I don't remember anything about last week's episode except for the
Never.
Titans. I'd
Oh
be a
yeah,
real
no, like
shit if I didn't remember the Titans.
dude, people don't understand. We go into a fugue state when we record these things, and so like when we come out of it, we have no idea. It makes it more enjoyable as a podcaster to be able to go back and listen to your episode and be like, "Man, I can't believe we talked about that."
I really love. There's a guy who listens to us in Canada. His name is Hab Guy. We met through like the Legend of Zelda and me streaming on Twitch, and he is catching up on the show. So hi Hab, right? Because you're gonna be here soon enough.
When you finally get here.
When you finally get here, hi Hab, giving you a shout out. And he's about a year behind where we are right now, and he will ask me questions about episodes that are a year old, and it's very interesting to try to put myself back into that headspace of where I was when we recorded that episode.
We can't maintain consistency from week to week with our opinions and feelings about things. How does he expect us to understand how we felt about a thing a year ago?
It's cool though, because it reminds me, oh yeah, I talked about this. And then sometimes I'll be like, let me re-listen to the episode, and I will love to have a conversation about it. But hi Hab, thank you for that. But you're not wrong about the fugue state that we do enter when it comes to this. And unfortunately, while you're in a fugue state, I don't know what puppet master is controlling us, but occasionally he takes us down the tributaries that do not relate to things that at the beginning of the episode I'm like, this is something we are going to discuss. And one of those things was Josh Radnor. I'll pause for you to go, who's Josh Radnor, listener?
Ross in real life. But yeah.
He played Ted Mosby from 2006 to 2014. Oh no, 2005 to 2014 on How I Met Your Mother. And last Sunday, he had an article come out talking about why people were still mad about the series finale of How I Met Your Mother.
Is that like the first? Is that like the first example of a artistically finished work? Like, let's put it this way: artistically finished work, meaning that it wasn't cut short by the studio, but rather actually was like it had been going on a bit too long, and the people that started it got to finish it, right? So, an artistically finished work that the audience just turned on. Is that like the first true example of that? Like, it cannot be. I cannot imagine it is, but it sure does feel like it. And it feels like it's happened a lot since then. So I'm just wondering if that's what like opened the floodgates.
So it's certainly not the very first. Mass Effect 3 and
Okay.
its ending definitely occurred before How I Met Your Mother's
Yep.
ending. At 2 years prior to How I Met Your Mother's just swing and a miss in a series finale. But they missed so hard that they lost all the other runs that they had put up in the first 8 innings. From the first 9, like 8.5 innings, really, right? It's the bottom of the ninth.
It's like finding out at the last game of the World Series that they've been illegally watching tapes the whole time, and that never happens. But like that's as an audience member, right? Like that's what it feels like. Is it feels like you've literally been cheated, like to complete the analogy there. But unlike Mass Effect, you can't fix this shit with DLC.
I mean, they
I guess
tried. Let's give How I Met Your Mother some credit. They tried to fix it with DLC by releasing the alternate ending on the DVD set, but not just the regular season 9 DVD set. You had to buy the complete series in order to get that specific bit of bonus
There we
content.
go. That's some good late 2000s bullshit right there. Yeah, give us much, much, much more money, and you can get the ending you wanted all along. Now it's starting to sound a lot more like Mass Effect.
And it's not even the ending that we all wanted. It's just, I mean, the mom still dies. We just, it's just not that the last 9 years of my life was not my father asking my permission to date our aunt. Which, like, that's what it became. It's like, it's such a weird moment in time. And you're not wrong. It sort of opened up the floodgates to people complaining about a completed artistic work and also erasing it because it had an ending that they didn't enjoy. And now we're even post that with the Snyder Cut. Because of the Zack Snyder Cut of Justice League, Kevin Smith might finally be convinced to do the Snyder Cut of Jersey Girl.
I here's the thing. You sent me that stuff about Smith, and I love the man dearly. He may do it. It also could very easily be a thing that he's just trolling about because that's his life. That's what he does.
Except I know that it exists. There is the version of Jersey Girl where we get more time with Ben Affleck, with Ollie, and Gertrude, played by Jennifer Lopez, that once Geely came out and was a huge, like, stain on just Hollywood in general.
But specifically their relationship and their on-screen relationship.
Yeah, but Geely did so poorly that they went to Kevin Smith and they're like, she needs to die right at the beginning. We don't have time with them anymore. That goes away.
Yeah. Oh man. But like to bring this back to How I Met Your Mother in the land of bullshit characters and how there was never going to be a good ending for Ted. This is not like the first time that people disliked an ending to a beloved sitcom, right? I mean, the major comparison to How I Met Your Mother is Friends, not 6 years previously, ending before this show started, right? And like
it ended 1 year before How I Met Your Mother.
I thought it ended in like 2000, 2001.
1994 to 2004 is the 10 seasons of Friends.
Fuck. Anyway, more to the point though. Friends ended, and it was not a beloved ending. Honestly, there was a lot of talk. People still nowadays talk about how Joey was the true love for Rachel, and like, but we still go back and we enjoy Friends and we watch Friends. And we all sit around and we joke about how Ross just gets worse and worse as the character goes along. But, like, we can look at David Schwimmer and be like, David Schwimmer's great. David Schwimmer does fantastic work, and he puts the work in on that show. I just hate what they did with Ross. Don't love that ending. But, man, the rest of that show is great, right? They cannot, the exact same people that can have that conversation cannot do the same with something, as you said, a year later, How I Met Your Mother. There's legitimately now, there is a hard line between how the ending of Friends was treated and how the ending of How I Met Your Mother is treated. And that is what I mean by opening the floodgates. And Mass Effect is a really good pull for this because it is kind of, I think, maybe like the first thing that I can think of in a world in which social media existed, in a world in which fandom was getting kind of the leverage that it got. Like, there's a lot of things that allowed stuff after Friends ending to kind of really get the one up on artists and creators and studios in a way that we never had that ability before as like an audience, right? And maybe that's why we don't really have anything before like the Mass Effect How I Met Your Mother era of endings. But I mean, like, wrapped up in that is Star Wars, wrapped up in that is Game of Thrones, wrapped up in that Sopranos even got a little bit of it in people being kind of miffed at it, but we still talk about Sopranos being a phenomenal show despite the fact that its ending is a head scratcher to say the least, right? Like, it's weird to think about the ways in which we talked about endings before, and people would complain and people would talk about it. Moonlighting was great until they got together, right? Like, that's a known thing. People still fucking love talking about Moonlighting.
I mean, Seinfeld, historically, the finale of Seinfeld is whatever the opposite of beloved is. I guess beguiled. It's beguiled. It's derided. Nobody likes that last episode of Seinfeld, but that does not change the fact that there was a huge fight to own the rights to distribute Seinfeld on DVD and then to have it on your streaming service. And then the whole discussion about how we're going to make it widescreen, and we're going to do that the proper way. Like, Seinfeld.
There's an argument to be made. There's an argument to be made that Seinfeld's true main character is not Seinfeld, not Jerry Seinfeld, but George Costanza, and they just George Costanza the ending. That's all. So really, it's kind of in line with the rest of that show. But that's a unique argument specifically to Seinfeld.
Right, and we all know that now George Costanza is the main character of Seinfeld, because Curb Your Enthusiasm currently creating its 11th season, maybe 12th. No, they're currently shooting their 12th
Venture Brothers,
season.
Yeah, Venture Brothers style release dates, but yeah, they're
It's still, whenever I hear that Larry David's coming back, and he survived Clear History, that movie that had an incredible cast, but like, what is it?
He survived a Woody Allen.
Yeah. How did he get into a Woody Allen movie with all the making fun of Woody Allen that he did?
Because Woody Allen basically saw him as like a perfect surrogate. Basically, he's like, oh, he's me, but without any of the baggage.
I don't know. But yes, there are plenty of like finales that miss the mark, to say the least. I mean, it's hard to be MASH, Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, which is probably the perfect finale. But really, MASH was lucky, because all you have to do to end the show MASH, to end MASH, Mobile Army Surgical Hospital, is end the Korean War.
Yeah.
Like,
I will stand by certain, like, there are certain finales that I actually hold up as pretty phenomenal episodes of the shows themselves. My go-to for this would be the finale of Angel. Say what you will about Whedon, like I cannot stand here and argue about what we now know about him as a creator. But the finale for Angel, and I'll spoil it now since everybody is probably not going to watch it because of their feelings for Whedon. But the idea that there actually isn't an ending, like the final moments of that show are all like, it feels like penultimate buildup and then like fade to black. They never finish it, and it actually works. Like, it's hard to do it justice and explanation. You legit have to watch through 5 seasons of that show to get to the moment where they're all standing in an alley, rain coming down. Angel looks up to the sky and is just like, let's get back to work. Like, and that's the final like line of the entire series. It's just like, yeah, that's kind of what the show was all about, wasn't it? It was just like, it never's gonna fucking end. We just gotta keep going.
I mean, that's invariably why Angel is more enjoyed by the people that I talk to who watched both of them.
Angel holds up better because of a show that acknowledges all of the flaws of everything, like masculinity and things like that. Whereas like Buffy is like all about perfection, which cannot exist, and then we learned did not exist on that set. Whereas like Angel is all about imperfection, and we learned there was probably a lot of imperfection going on, but that's an argument for another day. But like, there are finales that work. I just want to make sure that like we do give those their due. Like you said, MASH is probably the perfect example of a finale that is so good. Even Twin Peaks actually pulls itself out of a tailspin with the made-for-TV movie Fire Walk with Me, where the second season of that show is just garbage, but then they actually pull off a pretty decent ending, and then enough for them to come back with a amazingly well-received third season on Starz.
Yeah, I mean,
Showtime? Either way.
I think Showtime. I don't know.
One of those.
It's one of those series, one of those pay cable networks that are now streaming services. Let's just be honest about it. But yeah, it's one of those things where I'm a big fan of the one and done series, because like they're also that kind of, it doesn't get an end, it doesn't really get a resolution. So it's like, these people that I enjoyed spending time with, I'm not going to see them again, but I know the type of stuff that they're going to be doing while I'm not around.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to write about it. I'm not a fanfic person. And if you are a fanfic person, that's fine. It's just not my cup of tea.
So Ted Mosby, man, had the balls to Josh Radnor said a thing. I'll be honest, I was having a hard time even finding the exact words to this quote, but do you have them somewhere?
What he said was, in a lot of ways, it's angrier to be upset that a show has ended in a way that you did not want it to end than to acknowledge your sadness that it's gone.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, it makes about as much sense as when you say it as it possibly could, I guess. But like, yeah, the idea that as fans, quote unquote, rather than be sad that the show doesn't exist anymore, we now just are more prone to just getting on Twitter and shit posting, because we're just angry. Uh, I I don't. Here's the thing. It's a thing that is hard to argue with. It's a sentiment that's hard to argue with when you look at the ways that people react to things. Like I pointed out, things like within the last few years, Game of Thrones, Star Wars, and then in that the toxic like ways in which people approached people had nothing to do with the finale. Like actors and actresses, they didn't have any control over where things were going. They were there, right? And up to those points, like they were beloved. Like so, like J.J. Abrams comes to you and says, "I'm going to make you a Jedi." You don't say no, even if after you look at the script you scratch your head a bit. And this is coming from somebody that disagrees in that sentiment, but like even if I were to put myself in the mindset of someone that did not enjoy those films, I still wouldn't blame like Daisy Ridley. You know what I mean? I wouldn't blame John Boyega for being in these movies. Like, why are those the people you would attack? Why would you attack anybody?
Right. I mean, you could say you didn't like a thing, and then that can be the end of it.
Yeah. I mean,
you don't need to
look at my expressed feelings on Justice League, both versions. We have recordings of both. I didn't go out there and scream at Ben Affleck.
You know what, though? Let's be honest. If you had found a way to confront Ben Affleck to scream at him about Justice League, I feel like all of his goodwill in your life and the greatness that Ben Affleck has bestowed upon you, you couldn't do it. You just couldn't do it. It'd be like, "Thank you for the work, Mr. Affleck." And then I'd come out of the bushes where I was hidden to like get it all on camera and like, "Dude, what happened?" And you're like, "It's not that bad. It's okay."
If you were, yes. Well, okay. Like, let's talk about that, right? Like, the idea is at the end of the day, if I've met Ben Affleck in person, I wouldn't walk up to him and give him shit about Geely, because at the end of the day, he is a guy doing work that is loving what he does, and I get at least some semblance of enjoyment out of his existence, right? Like, to react to a human being in a way, like a video game developer or a movie creator or a television artist in some way, and react as if what they did, completely divorced from my reality, broke my reality, that is unhealthy. That's the word I'm going to choose.
Well, yeah, you're not wrong. That's a perfect word to describe it. I mean, you're putting too much of yourself into the things that you like and not into who you are, right? Like, I think that's another thing. It goes back to the high fidelity argument of you're not what you're like, you're what you like. And if something that you've used to define you for so long suddenly has a bad ending, like, does that mean that you're a bad person? Because you've been How I Met Your Mother for the last 9 years, and then this is the ending. This is what it does in the end. And
Well,
it makes you
here's the secret.
rethink and reshape.
Right, but this is what leads to this exact same attitude that starts with somebody being pissed off at like Allison Hannigan for the end of a series she had no control over. People that give like Jason Segel and Neil Patrick Harris shit on Twitter about the ending of How I Met Your Mother. Those kinds of people are the exact same ones that when somebody gets quote unquote me too'd, when shit comes out that, hey, this person may not be the artist that we held them on the pedestal to be, they feel personally attacked. And they feel the need to both defend shitty behavior and are somehow brought down by the fact that somebody called out Joss Whedon. By the fact that, I mean, like, even let's point to somebody that kind of came out smelling like roses, but they still went through the shit. Somebody like Dan Harmon or even Aziz Ansari, right? These guys that, like, they got called on legitimate shit that happened, and their reaction was, by all accounts, the more mature, better reaction to these things, which was to admit, learn, grow, move on. They still talk about it, but they talk about how they have been changed by it. Like, they are in this position. And you still have people, even there, who feel like, well, like Rick and Morty is my fucking life, so fuck you for calling out Dan Harmon and this shit. It's just like, and it's just like, relax, like you need to divorce yourself from this thing that you had you're not part of this, but you feel the need to defend it, to jump in on it, to be a part of it because your personality is so wrapped up in it. It's as I said before, unhealthy. But like, this is kind of like a a tamer version, I guess, of that kind of shit, but like it's all related.
Yeah, it's what begets that type of shit. This
Hmm.
is the 101 course, and that's the 400 level course.
Yeah.
So like if you stay in that program, that's unfortunately where you can get. But that's not really what I wanted to talk about with it. I mean, this has been a great discussion, and it's but what was really strange to me was like, why is Josh Radnor choosing now, April 2021, to address the finale of How I Met Your Mother? Like, I get that it's been 7 years, but like, what's like? Is it just a slow news day in Hollywood a week before the Oscars, and that's why they're printing this? I was more confused by that. That
I
was the
mean,
thing
I
that
have
I.
my theories, but like, did you come to some conclusion?
Oh, dude, not did I didn't just come to some conclusion. I would like to accuse Mr. Green with the pilot in the conservatory.
Oh man.
Be-
What you got, Dev?
because Hulu this past week has picked up and sent to series How I Met Your Father, starring Hilary Duff as
Yeah,
the Ted
and
Mosby.
the Hillary Duff Hulu relationship has actually been pretty decent considering they got a huge uptick in viewership with Younger,
Yep.
which was a Hillary Duff project that started on A&E, I think. Isn't it one of those?
Yeah,
It
it's
like
one of those.
started
Yeah,
on like Wii or something like that, and then like Hulu ended up picking up as a quote unquote Hulu original. We've talked about this before, though. What Hulu does is that it just finds stuff that's kind of either dying on the vine or not getting as much viewership as they think it could, and then they just slap the Hulu original title on it, despite the fact they had nothing to do with it, and suddenly everybody loves it.
but is
Like,
Younger also now finishing on Paramount Plus?
is
Like
that
it's
what it
gone
is?
through
Yeah,
3 iterations
yeah,
of.
yeah,
Yeah, I forgot about the first one because of that Hulu original slap that got put on Younger. So
yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah.
Continue. Sorry.
But no, but that's exactly it, right? Is they realized that they had something special with that particular show. So it does not surprise me that they're jumping at the bit to get another Hillary Duff project. On top of that, something like How I Met Your Father. I know for a while there were some rumblings about it possibly being the Lizzie McGuire reboot, but Duff had some pretty high demands of what that show would be if it were to come back. And I don't know if they're like still in talks for that or what. But this seems like a nice middle ground for them to get her back on board with Hulu and not have to kind of like rise to the legitimately fair like demands that she had for something like a Lizzie McGuire like return, which were things like, yeah, but we're gonna approach like feminism and womanhood and all of that shit like we did before. So that means we're going to talk about things like trans rights and stuff, guys. And then Disney shit their pants and was like, maybe we don't do this.
Maybe this isn't our flagship for Disney Plus.
Yeah,
Get
yeah.
Stephen Brill on the phone. He's not doing anything.
But yeah, so it's I don't know the full connection there, but it's interesting because you threw this at me. You were like, "Hey, Hillary Duff is coming back, but it's How I Met Your Father, and she's in it." And then Hulu greenlit the pilot, and I was like, well, "Shit!" As far as I knew, they were talking to her about Lizzie McGuire for so long. Maybe that fell through, but this was like their compromise.
Yeah, it's just crazy. But it would then make sense if you think about the entertainment news cycle to have like Josh Radnor come out and start rumbling about How I Met Your Mother, so that like maybe people are doing a search. I mean, Amazon's been pushing pretty heavily the Bro Code 6-pack, which is
Yeah.
6 Barney heavy episodes that like weirdly doesn't start until like almost, I think the first episode is the end of season 2.
Yeah.
Like there's no season 1 episodes at all.
It's not that weird. Barney became a very specific type of character eventually on that show, and in the beginning, it's weird because the growth is not as unexpected or unearned as it sometimes is in these shows, where like a side character suddenly becomes a main character and suddenly they're the best character. Kramer, right? Like let's point out.
Let's choose other ones that we've already touched. Yeah.
But in that, he becomes a much deeper and interesting character to watch in the second half of that series, which is why it's such a shame the way that that show ends, because of the way specifically he gets treated in that whole story. Because they do such a good job of bringing around the idea of where he starts. Isn't season 2 where you get like his background, or is that even season 1?
Season
Is that
3 is
season
where
3?
you start to get his background,
right?
where he
Right,
thinks that
where they
Bob
start to
Barker
really-
is his father, and the first sort of rumblings of it is the fact that his brother is Wayne Brady, so
Brady,
that his
right.
mother like had 2 sons from different fathers, and then you find out, and on top of that, Barney thinks that Bob Barker is his dad.
Right. Yeah, so it's end of season 2, going into season 3, and then the rest of that series, they really start to focus on him. So I'm not too surprised that that's how late in the game it really goes for Barney heavy episodes.
Right. I guess where it hits me so much though is that first season, right? The whole I kind of want to ask out your Aunt Robin now that your mom's dead thing. Like
Yeah.
historically, the guys who created that show had their beginning and had their ending, and pretty much had mapped out the first season. And then when it was as huge as it was, they just had to keep adding and mutating and going with basically popular opinion to keep the show popular, which is why Barney and Robin go from sort of one-note characters in the first season to the most richly developed characters in the series. It becomes their show, to the fact that the last season is their wedding, the 2 days of their wedding stretched out over 24 episodes.
Hey, it's the Joey Rachel problem, but yeah,
exactly. But that's but all of this stuff has been coming up. So then when I finally see that Hulu has decided to go to series with How I Met Your Father, I'm like, and that's it. That's the payoff. All of these breadcrumbs have been leading to this candy house. And
I mean, I will give you all of this. You're not wrong. I don't know if Hulu goes to Josh Radnor, or if Josh Radnor just being involved in the conversation hears these things. I mean, like, are any of them on as like EPs on the new series? Maybe, I don't know.
There's so little information right now, but the thing that I feel like they'd be offered it is because there's a lost chapter that we have to acknowledge. And the reason why this episode is titled How I Met Your Devon is because now that they've gone with How I Met Your Father, HIMYD, or How I Met Your Dad, I feel is out there. And I want to claim it for the Say Report. So How I Met Your Devon, right? Because How I Met Your Dad was the planned spin-off of How I Met Your Mother in 2014 that died so hard on the vine that it, like, and I had the pilot. At one time, I had a copy of the full pilot of How I Met Your Dad. How I Met Your Dad. I cannot find it. But it was such a weird thing to watch. Because it was Greta Gerwig, right, when she was still acting, before she decided I'm going to become a director and a creative sort, write the things that I want to be in, as the Ted, and Meg Ryan as the Bob Saget voice in the future.
Weird.
And it was just so strange because, like, you could kind of tell that from the beginning they wanted to sort of correct the issue of the Barney Robin thing. So she's more Robin, and like the guy, I can't think of his name, he was in Mixology. I don't know. Does anyone remember Mixology?
Jesus,
13 episode amazing series.
Jesus, that was like a huge ensemble cast, though,
Yeah,
right? So when you say the guy from Mixology,
right, the redhead bearded guy, episode 4 was his episode of the 13. He ends up with I think a bartender. I don't know. Like that show is a fever dream to me because I watched it all in one go and it just felt like a drunk night at the bar. Because I was also drinking. Let's be honest. You don't watch 13 episodes of TV without a cocktail. But like, and you could kind of tell that like they're hinting that they're in end game, but they also want there to be the distraction of it, and in trying to locate that pilot again, I found 10-minute highlight video on YouTube, which I couldn't bring myself to watch because I've
Andrew
seen
Santino,
the whole thing.
by the way.
Yeah,
just a quick Google hit up on that. Who's the redheaded mixology? Andrew Santino.
Okay, well, he's a great actor. He's done some other things. Very funny guy, but you could kind of tell that they were trying to make him a less womanizer Barney Stinson.
Nice.
And it was like, it's an interesting thing, but you can kind of tell why it failed, especially in the wake of nobody liked the finale. And then Greta Gerwig, she's laughing all the way to the bank with all of her Oscar nominations for Lady Bird and Little Women and all this other work that, like, good work that she's done in the wake of that. Like, she had a thing where she's like, I'm the reason that show didn't go forward, because they shot the pilot, they tested it, and the only time that people were not feeling it was when I was on screen. And she's like, but I don't care, because now, like, look at me, I'm an Oscar-nominated director, and I've done all this great stuff. So, like, thanks, How I Met Your Dad. Like, stupid. Like, she avoided being in the Joey of Friends. And I feel like Joey probably deserves a rewatch if we can find it anywhere. Like, in the wake of what we now know about Friends. But that's an exploration for another time on a later episode of the Stay Report. Will, I think, would like to be involved based on the discussions. Yeah. But it's one of those situations where, like, How I Met Your Dad was a thing. They already tried it. And one of the reasons I'm so, like, intent on locating that pilot that I have somewhere in my thousands of terabytes of data stored on various hard drives is because I don't doubt for a second that the script for the pilot of How I Met Your Father is not going to be almost the same thing. When it comes from out of the blue, there were no rumblings of How I Met Your Father coming. Like, the stuff that I heard about How I Met Your Mother-related creative stuff was Josh Radnor saying people were mad at it because they didn't want to be sad. Transference.
Oh, man. Like, all I can think of is that scene from The Critic. Do you remember the when Jay goes to Hollywood, or Jay does LA, or whatever the name of the episode is, when he gets to hire to write Ghostbusters 3, and and the guy is going through all of the scripts that he buys and buries because they're just too good, and he finds, what is it, like Revenge of the Nerds 6 or like Police Academy 20, and he kisses it, and he's like, what are you doing in here, you beautiful baby? You could be a mint. And he throws it out the window, and he goes, get to work, and all the guys cheer.
Yeah, no, I do. It's
just like that. Somebody at Hulu was like looking through their files and like found it buried under like a box of pizza. They were just like, How I Met Your Father? What are you doing? Let's get you made.
How I Met Your Dad? We make this How I Met Your Father? We gold mine.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's and that's why I want to, like, compare the two, because I feel like that's what's going to happen. Also, that terrifying thing that you just described, I hope that no one ever finds the U.S. spaced script, which I still have a copy of. We did that reading of it once. Do you remember?
Yeah. I always think of the USIT crowd with
Joel McHale and Jessica St. Clair. Yeah. I have that. That pilot. Man. I found that in my searching for. I also have the pilot for Super Clyde. Do you remember the idea of Super Clyde? It was basically not How I Met Your Mother. Basically, My Name is Earl, but it was Rupert Grint, and he was a millionaire, and the money was left to him by his uncle, only if he would use it to do good deeds.
Which is kind of actually the point of Brewster's Millions more than My Name is Earl, but I can see the
it's Greg Garcia. It's Greg Garcia.
Yeah.
So My Name is Earl gets canceled. So he's like, I have this idea where, like, so it's a British guy who's sort of popular, and he's done with Harry Potter movies. Yeah, like, it's this crazy thing. Yeah, that U.S. script for Spaced. Oh, that might be something that we need to discuss as maybe a special project, but not here, not now. But it's just one of those situations where I'm like, it's got to be the same thing. And if it's the same script, right, that script is not 10 years old. It won't be 10 years old until 2024. So anybody who was signed on to be a part of that production when it was first shopped around as a pilot legally has right to still... like, get first crack at contributing to it. so
Yeah,
that
right of
they
first
can,
refusal. They
yeah,
get to they get called up and somebody says you want to be you want to be involved in this, and they probably should rightly say no, but hey man, if there's money to be made, why not?
exactly. So I feel like we're going to be, we have another thing coming down the pike where I'm going to watch a whole series of TV on Hulu and then try to do an episode on it for this show somewhere down the line. But it's going
Yeah.
to be How I Met Your Father. And I just can't believe we live in a world where How I Met Your Father is going to be a real thing. But I took a lot of like comfort in when I read that, because I'm like, that explains why Josh Radnor was trending briefly.
Yeah. I mean, the other side of this is that out of that original group from that show, Radner is the one that I mean, the dude's just thirsty. Like he is trying so hard to make his nut like after that series and in his own way. Like he very clearly is not willing to go the route that guys like Siegel and um Neil Patrick Harris did and all those guys, like, because they're all still working, doing phenomenal work, going out there, but he has tried so hard to be the Zach Braff like indie director that gets born out of that, right? Like he tried with what was like not High Education. What was the name of the one where he was like the college professor sleeping with his student and stuff like that? Like he's taken so many hard swings to be the artsy guy that came out of How I Met Your Mother, and it not working. It didn't surprise me that he was the one with the pig-headed quote about like people just don't like endings, and it's just like calm down, just take a breath, man.
So that's good. Also, like, let's give Colby Smulders.
Yeah.
I want to cheer for you for probably being the most successful person in the wake of How I Met Your Mother, with just the many projects that you've been a part of. I mean, you're Maria Hill, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
You were in Homecoming. I mean, you were an alien in disguise as you, but you were still in the last Marvel Cinematic Universe film to release in theaters.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's it. Anything else to add on How I Met Your Mother, How I Met Your Father, or How I Met Your Devon? I'm making it a thing, man. I'm sorry.
No. No, it's fine. We're moving past. If we can move past How I Met Your Mother now, I would be very pleased.
Okay. So where do you want to go from here? I dropped so many things on your feet, but like, what's a sieging topic?
I mean, we should do a quick minute, if not just because of the beloved Bridget Wilson on the amazing Mortal Kombat movie that came out this weekend.
Oh, dude, I would love to talk about Mortal Kombat. Is it fair to say that it gets the Say Report stamp of approval?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, dude, just full stop. Yes, yes. I think my official feelings on it is that it does such a great job of hitting the same points in my heart that the 95 version did. It doesn't do anything worse, it doesn't do anything better, but it doesn't do anything worse than the 95 film did either. So like all of those loving like nostalgic memories I have of like going to Blockbuster Video and renting like Mortal Kombat, and then we somehow literally found on the street a unboxed VHS copy of Mortal Kombat Annihilation that my brother and I must have watched 1,000 times once we found it. He might not even remember. It was probably just me putting it on all the time thinking he liked it. But those movies were weirdly kind of nostalgic for me. Like they were, we talk a lot about the Saturday afternoon film, and they filled that hole perfectly, right? It's not going to win any Oscars, but at the same time, it's gonna be a hell of a good time for 2 hours. And I feel like they did such a good job with this movie. I was worried because a lot of the talk beforehand, a lot of the marketing, a lot of the push for this, there seemed like the word I'm going to use is gravitas. It seemed like there was a lot more gravitas to this film than there should be to a Mortal Kombat. And I don't want to say should be, because that's not fair. If they can pull off that kind of film with any type of IP, I love to see it. But Mortal Kombat really kind of like it revels in being in that like B movie like category of game and film, right? Like, I mean, like I believe Ed Boon would be happy to talk about like all of the bloody like horror and ninja movies and things like that he was super into that made him make Mortal Kombat, right? So to make a Mortal Kombat movie and to be aiming for the stars in the way that the marketing really kind of felt for this film, I was nervous to say the least. So like watching it and seeing that like it definitely has weight behind it. There's definitely character development and there's story and it's really well like the CGI slash prosthetic work is like super good in this movie. Like there's a lot of really well made movie here, but they also are never shy about the fact that it's just fucking Mortal Kombat. It has a love for the game and for the series that I very much appreciate.
All right, so Two Truths and a Lie, Mortal Kombat Edition. Mortal Kombat 1995 is the first movie that was watched in our new home in Rhode Island. Is the first full movie that we watched in Rhode Island. I have never seen Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Okay.
I owned the first Mortal Kombat movie on Blu-ray.
I bet you own the first Mortal Kombat on Blu-ray. I bet that you definitely watched it as the first movie in your house in Rhode Island. I cannot believe that you've never seen Annihilation.
I've never seen Annihilation. I three-truthed you there. I fucked that up.
You dick. Annihilation is the one though where he okay. So here's the thing. Like watching those movies was more of my love and experience with Mortal Kombat than the games were until I later got into the games, specifically with like the reboot with like Mortal Kombat 9 and then 10 and then and all that. And to that, I will even add the DC
the DC crossover.
Well, and
or
because
the Injustice
of the crossover, Injustice, and then the crossover, like that whole experience is what really made me realize that like I'm not a fighting game guy, but if I was like if I was to point to a fighting series that was my series, it's Mortal Kombat because there is lore, because these characters are just fun, because there is just a like I said, like it just revels in just like gore and silliness. Like the fact that I could drop a Mortal Kombat machine on somebody as a fatality was always funny. Like wow, what a weird meta thing to do, you know? And then like they introduced also I love talking about Mortal Kombat because the idea that it was one of the first series that I ever, as like a video game quote unquote scholar that I still purport to be, like it was one of the first times where people were really into a game and would talk about bullshit and say things like, you know, if you do this, then Santa flies across the moon, or if you do this, then this character appears, or you go to this level, and it was a lie. But Ed Boon and everybody at NetherRealm would like hear that shit, and by the next Mortal Kombat game, they would just make it part of the game. So then it wasn't a lie. And then it really fucked you up because you were like, oh man, I pumped so many quarters into the fucking Mortal Kombat machine trying to get this to happen and it never worked. But now on the home edition for my Sega, it is working. So was I just sucking at the arcade or did it just not exist there? Like you didn't know. So you never quite knew when you were hearing these rumors about Mortal Kombat what was true and what wasn't. And like that whole that is such a great like vision of like 90s video gaming, because you would hear from your friends that like, you know, if you hop this way and hop that way, like Sonya Blade loses her shirt. Like if you're just like, are you sure? And then you try it for like 3 hours and it doesn't work, and then you think you suck, but it's because that was just never part of the game, or you know what I mean? Or like you could do this particular fatality if you move in this way. Nope, that doesn't work either. But again, it could just be because you're just not doing it right. There's such a weird like community like side to Mortal Kombat that we see all the time now in games because of the internet, but back then that didn't exist. You just had to go off of what like older kids that were telling you.
Yeah.
And so there's also just a whole meta level of Mortal Kombat that I really found myself just like in love with when I was younger.
Oh, I agree. It's one of those things where I remember riding on the school bus talking about the Fergality and whether or not it was real or not. And like, no, it's probably not, but we tried like all Friday night to do a Fergality using a GamePro magazine that detailed it, but it was all fake. And my favorite Mortal Kombat thing is Ermac. The character of Ermac is just because the arcade screen had the thing that said Ermac is true. And is like, oh, so that means that there's a character named Ermac? And no, there wasn't. That was slang for error macro is set to true. So the game's broken, but you think it means there's a character in this game. And like,
guess what?
We'll make him a real character.
They made him a real character eventually, just because the fucking arcade machine literally ran out of memory. It was the same memory issue that Donkey Kong had that would lead to kill screens.
Yeah.
And people are like, look, Donkey Kong doesn't ever technically end. You just can't play because you can't see half the screen. And it's just, yeah, and oh man, it's such a great piece of video game history, right? And then so because of that, you get kind of these weird feelings when they're making a Mortal Kombat thing again. And it's the same feeling I felt all those years ago when they started making the webisodes that actually ended up also being really good with Jerry Ryan in them and shit like that. Mm-hmm. There's something about Mortal Kombat where I always get kind of nervous because somebody else wants to kind of touch it, but then it just always turns to gold. It's just so much fun. Every time somebody gets a hold of the Mortal Kombat IP, it's at least a good time. And man, this movie is such a good time.
Yeah. So to address what you said about no better or no worse, what I do think that this film did better was set up for a sequel. And I think that because one of the reasons I never saw Annihilation was, sure, the 95 one kind of ends with, oh, they're coming and all that other stuff. But then, when Annihilation came out, I'm like, oh, it's, not the same people, and I don't really care about it anymore.
Johnny Cage gets killed in the first 5 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not into this right here. I liked the 95 one. I had fun memories with it. I'm good to go. This movie, and everybody is so hot to talk about, I mean, spoilers, just in case, I'll spoiler tag it. We haven't hit anything yet. That there's no official tournament in this Mortal Kombat movie, and they have problems with that. That's the plot of Mortal Kombat 3. The third game in the series is Shao Kahn is butthurt that he lost the second Mortal Kombat tournament, which is really the 11th. I mean, it's 500th or something like that. But, it's the second one that we got to play as a video game. And because Earthrealm beat Outworld in Mortal Kombat 2, Shao Kahn's like, fuck it, I'll just invade. I don't give a damn about the rules of the tournament of Mortal Kombat. So it's really an invasion story. And that's why you have people like Curtis Stryker, who's just a cop who was there the day Outworld invaded and was able to stay alive.
Yeah. Well, and anybody that's complaining about that hasn't been paying attention because, really, a number of the Mortal Kombat, including the remakes, the rebirths, the reinventions, whatever you want to call them, they all revolve around some sense of, you're doing this out of line. You're not following that's always the story. Even when there is true combat going on, there's always the inevitable realization that they have been cheating, and so that's what that's always the concept. They're the bad guys. They cheated at Mortal Kombat. Ta-da!
Shang Tsung had his finger on the scale every time.
His fingers were crossed. Every time he said he was going to play by the rules, he was lying. Surprise!
That's why he wears the robe. He crosses his legs. That's why he's so slow. It's hard to walk with your legs crossed. Try it sometime. Man. So all that, well, that's weird because a big thing is that we tried it with the tournaments and then realized, nope, Earthrealm's too powerful. Let's just overwhelm them. Let's just overwhelm them, right? Let's just do that. Yeah. And that's basically what this is, well, if they don't have any champions to fight in this 10th Mortal Kombat, where if we win, Outworld, is given Earthrealm to do with what they please, there can't be a tournament.
Yeah. They also, they do a really beautiful thing story-wise, introducing this story with a new character, which is that's the reason you keep coming back to Mortal Kombat every time, right? Is to see the new people that they've introduced. And the introduction of Cole Young in this movie he's my new favorite. I want to play with him in one of the games. I want to play it. I want to main Cole Young for a while, right? he was just really fun to watch. I think they're setting up his daughter to possibly, I mean, be something in later movies. And like you say that they set this up for a sequel, and that's putting it lightly. They announced like a week before that the guy that plays Sub-Zero, the truly the ultimate villain of this movie, as much as everybody else is there. Sub-Zero is truly set up to be the big villain of this universe. The actor who plays him was like, yeah, I signed up for 5 movies. I don't know what they're going to be, but I'm going to be like, so Jesus, they're definitely planning some sequels with this one.
Which and I really like that too. Like making Sub-Zero the bad guy. It makes sense if you've played the games, but like when it was Scorpion's family getting killed in the beginning, my father's like, but that's Scorpion, he's the bad guy. And I'm like, shut up, Dad, watch the movie. Like, it's gonna be revealed. Because like I know that Bihan was without honor and eventually goes on to become Noob Saibot. And then his younger brother assumes the mantle of Sub-Zero and then tries to fight for his family's honor against the Lin Kuei. But like, my father doesn't know that. He just knows that Scorpion had a skull and was a bad guy in the first movie that he saw. You know what? However many years ago.
And the thing about Hanzo is that Scorpion Hanzo Hasashi is that he is a villain only in that at this point he is basically a hell beast, and he is made that way by the events of the past. So like it's a really complex story for the two of them that they set up as being interesting in this movie and complex, that at the same time we also just want to spend the whole movie listening. We just want to hear Scorpion say those words, and then he says them at just the perfect moment. Like it's such a great payoff, and this movie does such a good job of leading you to a thing and paying it off, leading you to a thing and paying it off. I love Liu Kang, and to see him not be the main character of this, like months ago when they were announcing this, I was like, oh, that's weird that he's not in this, and then realizing he was, but he's not going to be the main character, and now seeing him in it was awesome, because he would have been the main character and was the main character in the 90s, because he is the guy that he's like, I fight for the right, I am perfect. Now his attitude is a little cringy in that he's a little too sure of his like religious beliefs and like, so to make him a side character that we will inevitably see have to kind of deal with like his following of Raiden, who Raiden's not great, and like in the comics, in the games, he's never been the good guy. Like he's always just been a god, right? Like he's like, look, I can't step in one way or the other. I get angry, I do some things, so like I try to do what's right. But Raiden fucks up a lot in the games. He makes some big ass mistakes, and in fact, when we inevitably get to like time travel storylines in the games, there are timelines in which he becomes the bad guy because of his power and his ignoring of the rules and things like that. And so like seeing Liu Kang in this film following Raiden, who in this movie they don't hide the fact that he's not always the best. He's a bit of a douche to Cole Young, and then like puts his family in danger just to make him unlock his superpowers or whatever. Fuck that. And like Liu Kang's like I will follow you to the ends of this earth, Raiden, and I'm just like, he's not the guy. Like, don't do that. And I'm hoping in like future films we get to see Liu Kang really kind of grow away from that. But you need this version of him first, right? There's such a great like treatment of all of these characters. Kano starting out like kind of along with the humans because he is one, but then like what he becomes at the end, I can't wait to see him kind of get brought back with like his cyborg face. Like there's so much good setup for stuff later on, and they use it to make a really good movie here first.
Yeah, and that's my favorite. Like I remember when the first trailer came out, or one of the bigger trailers, and people were like, I can't believe Kano's a good guy, and I'm like, he's not a good guy. he's Kano. Yeah. They can't make Kano a good guy. And even my father, he's like, oh, I knew that guy was going to be bad. And I'm like, how'd you know he was going to be bad? He's like, well, he was bad in the first movie, but also when we met him, he was chained up. And I'm like, good job, Dad. You're smarter than quick reaction people on the internet. I'm proud of you. And I think what I dug about this movie is, like you said, it wasn't a great movie. It's not going to win any Oscars, but the story was so solid that even my mother, who's like, it was too much fighting, but I'm really invested in the story and where it goes.
Yeah, I think that the thing that knocks it down a peg in terms of story writing is the dialogue. The story is great. The dialogue really kind of stumbles. There's a lot of really dumb lines. Now, it's all in the service of them being able to then say dumb lines like, "Hey, big boy, over here," when Jax first shows up and is fighting the general. Like, why does he choose the general? There's really been no. It's a weird.
Oh, he
But it's
makes
okay.
fun of his arms.
That's
Before his Arcana comes up, Reiko makes a joke about his arms.
Yeah, but that's like
That's how Mortal Kombat.
that's all the reason is.
What they
exactly.
nailed how story mode, at least in Mortal Kombat 9 through 11, and going back to Mortal Kombat versus DC, which is what brought me back into the series, because that game on PS3 and Xbox 360 was so good. The way that it told the story of how Mortal Kombat and DC were able to interact with each other, like multiverse storytelling, all this. Like, the best part about those is a lot of the times in the story, they'll just be like walking around having a conversation, and then someone will be like, "Yeah, but your mother was an ugly cow," and then it'll be like, "Oh, it's time to fight."
Yeah.
And
well, now we have to kill each other.
And that happens when they're walking in the desert and Kano's like, "You want the mark, girlie? Take it." And it's just like, I'm like, and Dale's like, "It's just like the game." And I'm like, it is. And they nailed it. And it's not surprising if you've been playing the games to see that story translated to the screen and the way that they tell the story. It also makes sense that they would need like 5 movies to tell a complete story, where most of the story campaigns are about 4 or 5 hours long if you win every fight.
Well, and they're gonna get into things like time travel and other universes. Like if they're doing 5 movies, and what I actually think they're probably gonna do is probably a 3-movie like mainline, and then probably do like a Sub-Zero like spin-off series if things work out. Like, I imagine that's the dream right now. But even in a trilogy, right? Like doing things like the alternate universes and time travel and making that part of it, and going to like literally the end of the earth and having like awesome fights on an apocalyptic world and things like that, and dinosaurs in the background and shit. Like, they're gonna have so much fun playing with all of those elements from the game, and I know that, and I trust that because of how much fun they had just in this, playing with elements from the game.
Well, I mean, I know that because they showed Shinnok's medallion. And I'm just like, that's Shinnok's medallion. That's how time travel works in this universe.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked like the Eye of Agamotto too. So if you're not real schooled in the Mortal Kombat stuff, maybe you're like, "Oh, I wonder if that does time travel," because it's a gold medallion with a green thing in the center. They nailed all the Mortal Kombat lore, and it's so disheartening to me to see people who like the games say that they hated the movie, because I don't know what you wanted then. I don't know how it could have been better than what it was. Like, it's Mortal Kombat. It's schlocky, gory combat that, like, they decided, well, we're going to care about the lore. We're going to care about the story along the way.
Again, anybody that's saying that, I feel like you haven't been paying attention to what the games have actually been attempting to do.
You know what?
Because the story modes that they've introduced over the last few games, and the ways in which they have really embraced, like, the need for cohesive, like, character stories. So it's not just like, this is a reskin. Scorpion is just a reskin of Sub-Zero, and whereas like one shoots out ice, the other shoots out fire. No, now there's actually, like, there's story, and I'm pointing at something where that story was kind of always there, and they've just built on it over the whole series. But I mean, even down to like to introducing new characters and like, I don't know, man. I am with you. Anybody that watched this movie that says that they love the game and they hate this movie, I don't, like, what more could you have wanted? Because it either was going to go in one direction, where it was going to be so self-serious it wasn't going to be any fun, or it was going to be so fun that it was basically going to become... Do you remember the DOA movie they made a few years ago?
I love the DOA movie.
Jamie Presley, yeah.
Fantastic.
It's a phenomenal movie, but it is so silly and so married to being a version of the video game that it just falls on deaf ears for anybody that doesn't love that series,
Yeah, it's one of those ones where my dad's like, that was fun to watch, but I don't, like, what I'm like, I don't even know the story's that, but I had fun watching it. He's like,
Yeah.
never again. I'm like, no, not ever again. But it's also nice to see Jamie Presley not as Joy from My Name is Earl and not as Jill from Mom. Like, she's got range, and that movie really shows that off.
Yeah, but I think that I think that is one end of the spectrum, right? Is you've either got something like that, or you've got something that's so far removed from the game that it's not fun to watch, and that does nobody any favors.
I'm gonna go with Super Mario Brothers as my example of that one. It's an interesting movie, but it's not freaking Bob Hoskins doesn't eat a mushroom and become a giant. Which if that had happened, that'd be kind of cool.
The Koopa dudes in those movies is also very upsetting.
Do you mean the Goombas?
Yeah.
Or I love Iggy and Spike as the Koopa cousins. Yeah. I mean, granted, it's because it's the plague from Hackers, and Hackers is still one of my favorite movies. I cannot deny it. But yeah, I really dug Mortal Kombat. I think the only issue that I have, and I think it's partially because they're so beholden to the original Mortal Kombat in terms of everything that they're coming from, is that Sonya Blade, for a series where female representation has really shined as it's gone on and on. You think about the first Mortal Kombat and Sonya Blade is the only female combatant. And then they introduce Kitana and Melina and give them the whole story of, being these warring princesses who one is dedicated to their father and one isn't. And then how that whole story goes that. And then you get down to 10 and 11 where Cassie Cage and Jacqueline Briggs are kind of the main fighters and warriors of Earthrealm. They've done this really good job creating these strong female heroes. And then Sonya Blade, to hear from Kung Lao, which really speaks to just Raiden probably isn't a person that you should trust. You have no value because you don't have the mark. You can never unlock Arcana. So we'll let you stay in our clubhouse, but that's about it. Oh, that was strange. That was a moment. And they do give her a nice story where she earns her mark.
Yeah.
But there are strong females in the Mortal Kombat universe, and even Sonya Blade in this movie, she gets a really good, it's a good starting point.
Yeah, it felt to me despite what everybody was telling her, she's the only one that we see earn her mark. We hear stories that other ones have, but she's the only one that we watch the mark actually transfer, right?
Yeah, and that's cool. But then up until that point, she's kind of the exposition dump character, which is a little unfortunate. And then, we do see her beat Kano in the desert, and then that struggle of, but I can't just kill you in cold blood just to get your mark.
Yeah, I think that I was kind of doing a disservice to this because I am sitting here thinking, oh, but wait until you get to see Cassie Cage. And I am really expecting them to do some more with Emily Young, Cole's daughter.
Yeah. Cole's wife. The fact that she takes an axe right to Goro. I'm not afraid of Goro. I love my husband. Fuck you.
Yeah, no, she's amazing. Yeah, so I now that you pointed out, I can't disagree. That definitely happens in this movie. Oh, and I mean, I'm also not gonna hide the fact that our whole conversation about fridging last week, we literally watched Scorpion's family get frozen to death in front of his wife, get frozen to death in front of him, so that that is his motivation, right?
I'm glad that you bring that up. I'm glad that you bring that up.
Specific way possible. But so the movie does not do great in some of these realms, but there is potential for them to improve. There really is. And I hope that they take any notes that they can and improve in this way.
I question if Hanzo losing Jubei in the beginning and losing his family in that way in the beginning is fridging, because he also dies too.
He does also die too. That's an important fact.
It's an interesting thing because I'm is this fridging? I mean, it's also, that's the biggest part of Mortal Kombat lore that comes forward into this movie, is that Bihan murdered Scorpion's family, and then his rage and desire for vengeance is what allowed him to become the Hell Demon Scorpion. Like, so
For sure. But to that second point, I will say that you can't you that can't count, because as somebody that might not know the lore, if I go to see this movie, what am I getting out of it? And that's really what you have to think about, right? Is the blank slate. So like that's great that that's a part of the story and that's what they're bringing forward. But literally what you're pointing to is when we wrote shitty lore 30 years ago, this was a perfectly fine tactic to use, is that his wife gets killed in front of him and that's what makes him the Hell Demon. But that's the problem, right? So like but to your first point, I don't have a good answer. Like the idea that he dies alongside them might mean that it's not. I mean, he comes back. So
if the film were him dying alongside his wife, and then we follow Hanzo Hasashi as he trains in the Nether Realm and becomes Scorpion as he learns to control Hellfire, then definite fridging. But the fact that he is dead and then we jump from 1617 to modern times.
And like, it's not Cole's motivation. He's not like, my greatest grandmother died at the hands of you. Like, that's not part of Cole's story at all, right?
Yeah, like his motivation to fight is just to provide for his family. It's the only skill I have. So like, it was one of those things where I'm like, I think that like they kind of acknowledged how shitty this was by showing it, but them being like, but we're not going to, like, that's what happened. But that's not going to be what happens. Had Cole's wife and daughter died, then I would have been like, you just did that.
Yeah,
like,
kind of in a weird way, it's them kind of correcting the sins of the past by having Cole's family be present and not suffer the same fate. I mean, it's a really interesting conversation. It was just really hard to, especially after we had a whole recorded conversation about fridging, to watch that scene and not think about it the whole time.
Well, I know that I was right there with you, and that's why I was ready to have the discussion where I'm like, if they kill Cole's family, then they are they're double guilty of it. If they don't do it, and they're like, we acknowledge that this is shitty motivation and it's not why Cole Young is going to keep fighting as a champion of the earth, then they really surprised me by being able to, like, bad example of character creation, good example of character driven storytelling. But then also, and Dale is the one who pointed out the Sonya Blade thing, that like it felt so strange there. And then so I also want to give her credit for, it's a little sad that Cole isn't the one who has to earn his symbol, that he just has it. And I think that it'd be a different movie, but I think it would almost be a more enjoyable film if you have Raiden come out there like, you are the descendant of Hanzo Hasashi, we need to protect you because of this prophecy. But then he's like just there, like he used to fight. Like
but what I would say is divorced from that is that Cole is proven to be a much weaker fighter at first than Sonya. Sonya, time and time again, proves herself as a capable fighter, and it is just the men within the movie, not outside of the movie, but the men within the movie that constantly tell her that she's not good enough, and she proves to the men outside of the movie, like guys like you and me watching it, time and time again, that that's bullshit. So, like, in a weird way, it's drawing attention to the inherent like sexism that is present within this story, but not perpetrating it. It's never, they never tell her you're not good enough, and then lo and behold, she's not. She doesn't get defeated. Like, she constantly is in the position to win. So, like, in a weird way, like, all I got out of it is that Raiden and his followers are assholes, which honestly they kind of are.
Yeah, and will be deeper storytelling going forward.
Right.
Like, it's strange that they have Princess Katana's fan in, like, their trophy room.
Yeah.
Because what does that mean? Like, did you have a one-night stand with her, Liu Kang, and then steal that from her? Why is it in the trophy room?
Entirely possible.
Yeah, totally. I said that as kind of a joke, and then I'm like, no, but, like, what a way to take these sort of religious zealots and represent them as, like, but maybe their beliefs are not the ones that Earthrealm should be ascribing to.
Yeah.
it was exciting. It was the first film, and I haven't seen Kong versus Godzilla yet, so I will admit that like felt like it would have. So the HBO Max experiment, right? And I guess that's what we're gonna call it. A lot of the films that have come to it, they have some inherent weakness to them. And that might sound awful when I say it, but I could kind of see why, from a marketing standpoint, it's like, it's okay if we release this one simultaneously to theaters and streaming.
Yeah, I would say for me it's more been that their flaws are more obvious because of the HBO experiment, and what they were trying to see is maybe they won't be, and I think a couple of them have fallen on their face because of it. But I can see we're basically drawing two different conclusions from the same evidence, though. There's definitely been issues with some of the ones that they have chosen to do in this way, for sure.
Right. Well, it's chicken or egg. Are we noticing these flaws because we're watching them at home, so it's not the same as a theatrical experience? Like, we can pause, we can get a drink, we can go to the bathroom, we're in control? Or are those flaws there regardless?
Right.
Like, it's one of those situations where the observation, it's an interesting thing, but, like, I mean, I'll give all credit to Judas and the Black Messiah. That movie was really, really good, but it was Oscar bait, right? So you're kind of playing by different rules. Looking at the other ones, like Wonder Woman 84, The Little Things, Tom and Jerry, and Mortal Kombat, and again, Kong vs. Godzilla, I haven't had the chance to watch yet. Mortal Kombat was the strongest, like, experience of those four movies.
Yeah, for me, I think that comes from the fact that, as I said, even with the original one in '95, that it's just that kind of, like, Mortal Kombat as an entity is just that kind of thing. Like, there's an inherent joy, there's a funness, to make up a word. Like, there's a level of fun that is inherent in the Mortal Kombat ethos that just makes it a great time, whether I'm seeing it on a big screen or seeing it in my own. I mean, I'll be honest, I've only ever seen one on the big screen, and it was when they did like a midnight showing of Mortal Kombat at like fucking Cinema World once in the 2000s. Every other experience I've ever had with Mortal Kombat in any way has been a home experience. So I think it also kind of had a leg up in that way. So it was kind of set up to win for me. Let me put it that way.
That's interesting, because you're not wrong. Mortal Kombat, because I've never seen Mortal Kombat Annihilation, was the first film we saw in this house, and it was the first time that we saw it. It's not like we saw it in theaters or any way. Like, our first experience was the whole Decker clan, even the other Deckers, the Deckers who lived in Rhode Island at the time, they were at the house, and we watched it, all 8 of us. And it was this cool, like thing. And then it becomes part of me and my cousin's, like, friendship, is to discuss and play the Mortal Kombat games.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're not wrong. It is inherently built for the home. Ooh, that's interesting. Thank you, Sejin. You've opened my mind a bit.
I mean, like, and you know, like, we've talked about the idea that context is key, and going to a movie, like going to a movie theater to see a movie does a certain thing to you. So I would not. That it's not too big of a stretch for us to at least draw the conclusion that, like, movie drunk is a thing, movie theater drunk is a thing, right? Where, like, you go in, like, rose-colored glasses, like, this movie was so great when I saw it in theaters, but now watching it sitting at home, I'm really noticing some things I don't love about it. We've said that a million times, and the other way around. There's been movies that we saw in theaters and didn't love, but once we got to see them a couple of times in the enjoyment of our own home, we were just like, all right, I get it, I'm with this now. Like, that is. So yeah, the HBO experiment of what do we do them both at the same time? What does that do to our numbers? Is a pretty interesting experiment that we're never going to get the opportunity to ever see again. Really, this COVID thing really introduced the perfect environment for them to try this, and it's interesting because we kind of already know the conclusion, and that is that Warner Brothers HBO has decided after this year, no, we're not doing this anymore.
Right. But I wonder if they start, I don't know, like, if the later movies have that better performance at home when
Maybe.
Theaters are open, if there might be some, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be like how Rhode Island had legal prostitution for all those years, and now we see all these other cities that are decriminalizing sex work.
Yeah, somebody had to do the dirty work first and see how it all fleshed out. But yeah, no, I almost wonder what we'll probably see is more like special engagements. There will be something produced for HBO Max that they'll promote the hell out of as coming out on the app, but they'll say also for like 2 weeks it'll be in theaters. Like I believe that's more likely what we're going to see than them completely reversing on this call that they've already made that they're not going to do this anymore.
I hope so. I mean, I really enjoy being able to watch stuff at home. I can freely admit that I'm not ready to go back to the movie theater, which those are hard words to say, and I can't believe I just put them to digital tape. Especially when, did you realize that the third Spider-Man movie, No Way Home, is supposed to come out in December of this year?
I so I know that fact, and every time I think about it, my head hurts a little bit because of everything that's been going on, honestly, with Black Widow specifically. But yeah, yeah.
Like it's, I read that and I'm like, that doesn't seem right. That's crazy. So who knows? But yeah, it's just that. And I think this is a good point to jump over to. I didn't watch them. I don't know if you watched them, but I think we just have to tip our hats to the Oscars for even just like 5 minutes to talk about them
Yeah.
last night.
Yeah, they did them. They happened. We I mean, let's say it's our annual regret of not paying too much attention to them. But yeah, man.
I don't feel bad. Like I remember where the Oscars were such a big deal to me. Like I got to see all the movies and all that. I don't miss that part of my life. Like I feel like it's made my first quarter of the years a little bit less stressful trying to like find a theater that's showing some movie that barely got a theatrical release but is nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the Cinemark Theater in New Haven, but not having to like go and sit in that little 3-row auditorium to watch a movie, like I'm not sad about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that have contributed to me just kind of moving away from ever paying attention to the Oscars, really. And not least of which, it's because I've learned more and more and more that, like, I can enjoy a thing and I don't need the rest of the world to enjoy it too to validate that thing. And I think too often there have been people in my life that didn't feel that way. That, like, because it didn't win an Oscar, they just poo-pooed it. Or because it did win an Oscar, it suddenly was the best thing ever and I had to watch it. And then I'd be forced to watch it. And that's the worst way to enjoy a thing, is to be sat in a chair and basically strapped down fucking like Clockwork Orange style with my eyes taped open so that I can't look away. Oh yeah, I'm loving this one, guys. Like,
Can I get some more eye drops, please?
like, it's not even that I feel like just because a movie's Oscar nominated, that must mean it's trash. No. It could also be good. It could be bad. It could be great. It could be my cup of tea. It could be somebody else's. But it's that idea that, like, trying to gain a consensus with a group of people about a thing, I have in my older age, I won't say old age, but in my older age, I have come to realize that, like, a giraffe is a horse made by a committee, right? Like that idea that, like, that there's always this kind of, like, this give and take and this compromise in these situations that inevitably leads to the final product being this thing that, like, yeah, we all agreed upon it, but we all have our issues. Well, then what the fuck are we doing here?
I think for me, I started to, like, so I can't watch reality TV anymore because
Okay.
I've seen the DNA of it, and it's just like I can tell where it's going to go, or at least where what the producers have done with the raw footage to create their narrative. Like I see that, and I started to notice that same thing with the Oscars, and that makes it not fun to watch.
For sure.
Like it's like especially like the ones that I saw that were nominated for Best Picture. I mean, aside from Promising Young Women, which I still think has some issues. Like, I understand why they were nominated for Best Picture and for, like, Best Director and stuff. But if I were to put on my conspiracy theory hat, I could spin some yarns that would, like, make Q blanch. Like let's just be honest. And that's just, I don't like that. I don't like that. And not only can I come up with these, like, absurd theories, but I can find evidence that kind of supports it, going back over the 93 years that the Academy Awards have existed.
Yeah.
And that gives me a weird feeling in my tummy. And I don't need that
fun.
stress. I don't.
And it's not fun. There's not been any fun to the Oscars the last few years, and that's for sure. And they try and inject fun by getting somebody goofy to host them, but that's not where I need the fun, guys. It's the industry writ large has really had a real issue with for an entertainment based industry. It has not been very entertaining to pay attention to for the last 5 or 6 years.
True dat, cuz. Sorry,
yeah.
It was just fun to say. Though I am pretty happy that Promising Young Woman didn't get Best Picture or Best Director. But then there's still that little but we touched the knife to your skin with it winning Best Original Screenplay. Especially when I've heard that the original the screenplay didn't have a lot of the stuff that people cheered about the movie. It's one of those where do I need to track down a copy of the screenplay now and read it? And see, oh, yeah, it definitely deserved it. I can't do it. I just need to leave Promising Young Woman in the past. That's just what I need to do. And
I agree, for your own sanity, right? But that's the other thing, is that they really they fuel this sense of in fans and audience members that there is a must-see type of movie. And that's dangerous because of the ways in which it creates a winner and a loser situation. And we can't just put movies out and enjoy them. We have to be putting movies out, and then we have to pit them against each other. And I'm not going to stand here on my soapbox and act like that's what's ruining the entertainment industry. First of all, there's plenty of other things that can ruin the entertainment industry, but it is a conversation that I don't really care to ever have anymore in the context of the world writ large. I love having those kinds of conversations with friends. If somebody wants to talk to me about whether or not they should see Wonder Woman 84, let's have this conversation. You and I do this every week, right? But we do this every week because we are talking to each other from a standpoint of a friendship that has had years to coagulate into what it is, right? We understand one another, and when we don't understand one another, it's fun for me to learn new things about you. So I don't have that same feeling about Joe Schmo down the street who I don't care about, but they're the ones that are going to come and talk to me about how because this movie won an Oscar, I need to see it. And it's just I don't this is not the relationship that we share, right?
Yeah. No bigger proof to that than the night that I saw Kong Skull Island. Mm-hmm. And I ended up going to a film meeting afterwards, and I said, I just saw Kong Skull Island tonight. I really enjoyed it. And the guy tore me down, and then he somehow transitioned it into why he didn't like Silence by Martin Scorsese. And I'm yeah, I'm done. I'm never going to go to a film meeting ever again, because not what I wanted to do with Kong Skull Island. I was just talking about how it was a fun movie, and then you're oh, but the camera work, and I'm it's a fucking fake gorilla.
Do you want to know the moment that I realized that I was in a room full of sociopaths? Was when I was working in the Berkshires. I am not going to put a year on this because certain people out there that listen to this show could then probably determine who I'm talking about. But when I was working in the Berkshires one night, I'd come home from a show. It was 11 o'clock at night, and I'm just trying to fucking relax after working my ass off. And I'm sitting there, and a group of people that were also living in the same house as me, because we would all the workers would get put up in the same house, that didn't have to work that night, had gone to the movies. And they start talking about the movie 1408 and why they didn't like it. And that's fine. I had seen the movie, so I had kind of been I had been working all night, so I'm not gonna lie, I was being antagonistic with them because as somebody that enjoyed it, I wanted to hear what they had to say. Right. And
thank you for making me see 1408. That's official thank you, because it was one of them I'm interested, but I'm not really a big fan of Stephen King's horror movies.
Yeah.
And then you're we're seeing 1408, get in the car, and I'm fine. And then I'm this was awesome.
It was Samuel L. Jackson and John Cusack basically on screen together. Anyway, so so they're talking to me about this, right? And we're getting into it about why I really enjoyed the movie and this idea of it's all the circles of hell and all of this stuff. And then one of them goes, yeah, but then he wakes up on the beach and it's all just a fucking dream. And I said, fuck it. At that point, that's when it was done for me. And I was well, right, but then there's 20 more minutes of movie. And he's what? And he's yeah, that turns out to not be what happened. He wakes up and he's back in the room. That's just another circle for him. You didn't see that? And I was like, you guys all just left? And he was like, well, I had to leave because they were leaving their movies. And I turned to the rest of the group and I was like, what do you mean their movies? And they're all talking about how they all went to different movies. Each and every single one of them had gone to a different movie and then got in the car together, compared notes, and then all came home shitting on all of the movies that 4 out of the 5 of them hadn't been to because they'd all been to different movies. And it turned out that the one movie that they were really shitting on, the one guy that was quote unquote assigned to go to that movie, didn't even finish it. And I was like, in that moment, I stepped out of the conversation because I would have gone into a blind rage. It would have become 1408 in that fucking house. I was done. I was like, I was like, okay, and that has stuck with me ever since that happened. And that was after URI, I think, if I'm doing my math right. So like, it changed me. As a person in the ways in which I approach talking to other people about media, because I was just like, I listened for an hour to opinions about a movie that more than half of them hadn't seen, and the one person in the room that had seen it besides me didn't even finish it, and I'm not even saying you have to finish it to love it, but to levy a complaint against the movie because of its quote unquote ending, but you didn't see the ending. I was done. I was just done. And every time now, like, I think about things like the Oscars and shit like that, I think about, like, man, half of these guys have probably not even fucking seen it. Didn't we find that out? Didn't somebody, like, leak some shit about, like, animated, like, film, and about how, like, 90% of the people that vote on animated feature haven't even seen the movie? They just vote on whatever their kid told them was the most fun they had this year. Like that's shit like that comes out, and you're just like, the Oscars are meaningless. It's just meaningless.
Sejin. I think I've collected myself enough to say this. What you just described sounds like the worst improv game ever. Where you give 4 improv actors a different movie and they try to have a discussion about a single movie using only facts from the movie that they were assigned. Like, that sounds like a circle of hell to me. You talk about you would have made it 1408. That sounds like I'm in 1408.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah, man. Well, it turns out this is something that they just did. Like, these were friends that were working together, and this was something that they just all their lives that this is how they took in things. Like, I can only imagine that maybe, like, one of them was assigned to Real Housewives and the other one was assigned to Scrubs, and then they'd compare notes and decide what they both like based on what the other person said about the thing. So it's like playing a game of telephone with your art. Like, well, fuck that.
I mean, it also kind of sounds like a pretty solid idea for a podcast, but oh my God, we'd have to get the Shinnok's amulet in order to go back in time to the beginning of podcasts and then, like, somehow corner the market on what sounds like sort of you know what that is? I didn't want to make this real. I was excited to talk about entertainment. I hated every theater history course that I've ever taken. And I mean, ever taken. Mm-hmm. And I don't just mean the URI, because I ended up having to take the Renaissance one. I had to take that at Rhode Island College because the instructor refused to let me take his course because I had offended him somewhere along the line. Uh-huh. Right? Oh, yeah. This used to be my playground. That was a fun photo to send you yesterday. Every single theater history course that I took, a part of it was that the topics would be assigned to each student in the class, and then we would have to learn from that student about that topic. And that seemed so fucking backwards to me. To, like, well, I'm going to have this kid. I don't even know this kid from Adam, but he's going to teach me about Shakespeare. You're a professor.
We have talked about this project before, and the missing piece to this puzzle is that you're supposed to do that for like 15 minutes. They get up and talk about a thing, and then for the last hour of the class, the professor then picks up all the pieces that they left on the ground. That's supposed to be how that particular teaching style is supposed to work, but clearly that was not what ever happened in this class.
That didn't happen in any of them. The only one where that ever sort of happened was when I retook Theater in America, the Theater History in America. Mm-hmm. I had to retake it because I ended up getting an incomplete. And the professor took me aside where he's like, so I know you've taken this class already, and I'm not from America. I'm British born. You now know who it is, but maybe some of the listeners don't know. He's like, I'm really gonna be relying on you to make sure I cover everything, because I don't know anything about American theater history. And
that
I'm
was
like,
him tricking you into paying attention, you dummy.
it worked. Let's be fucking honest, Sejin. It worked. But
he played your hubris. He was like, I'm gonna need you to keep me in line, Devon, and you were just like, I'm on it.
It worked. Okay, so first of all, credit to that guy for solving the Da Vinci Code. Sorry,
no.
that I should not have been as proud of Da Vinci Code as I was. Whatever, let's move past it. But also, like, he also did that thing where the student assigned to it started the conversation, and then the conversation took off from that discussion.
Right.
Like, that's the only time that ever happened. So, like, yeah, the fact that he was able to trick Devon Decker, he earned that. He was probably the best professor who ever taught me theater history. And I want to stress, my theater costume history courses, some of the best courses I've ever taken. It was specifically theater history, learning about the history of theater, where every class was, all right, this week it's going to be Tom J. teaching us about, oh, what's this? Christopher Marlowe and his entire life. Yep, 50 minutes all to you to teach us about Christopher Marlowe.
He was a spy, and he got stabbed in the eye. That's like the most I remember about him in a bar fight. That's how he died.
I don't know.
He died. He was a spy, and he got stabbed in the eye.
I feel like you were probably a pretty fun professor to have, Sejin. What with all the rhyming? If you ever end up getting your doctorate, you should call yourself Dr. Seuss.
Oh God.
There's a hole that needs to be filled.
Dev. All right. You've already done 2 Devon puns this week, so we should probably end it sooner than later.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I do need to do one fucking thing, because you put me into this hell, and you need to pull me out of this circle of hell. Dev. What the fuck is Winnie the Pooh's Home Run Derby?
Is a cursed Flash game that I found out about a week ago. I was watching someone on Twitch, and they talked about their year of challenges, and they talked about all these games that they want to beat over the year, and they're like some notoriously hard games, and one of them was Winnie the Pooh's Home Run Derby. And I'm like, that can't be that hard, right? It's Winnie the Pooh's Home Run Derby.
Yeah.
So I found it online. It's still available, even though it's a Flash game. Ruffle. Like, we should probably talk more about Ruffle in a later episode of this show, because Ruffle is doing the Lord's work.
Saving Flash,
like,
one game at a time.
It's incredible. So I find it on Ruffle, and you start, and you're Winnie the Pooh, and it's Eeyore who's pitching, and he's going to throw, 10 pitches, and you need to hit 3 home runs. And if you do that, you'll get to level 2. And then it's the Heffalump character. I can't think of his name. I think it's like Willie or something like that. But
Wolfalump the Heffalump. There you go.
Okay, is that really his name?
No, that's not. I don't know. Maybe.
It starts with a W. And then it's him who's pitching. And you need to hit 5 out of 15. And then it's Piglet. And then it's Kanga. And then it's Rabbit. And, like, Eeyore, it's not super hard, right, to hit those. And then, like, the Heffalump, oh, he curves his ball a little bit. So, like, you need to, like, make sure that you're ready for the ball to curve. And then Piglet, they're all really kind of, like, low and slow, but then they kind of knuckleball at the end. And then you get to Kanga. And this is where I thought that, like, oh, this game is hard. Like, I get why people think this game is hard. And the ball constantly is doing a sine wave pattern as it comes to you. So, like, making it so Winnie the Pooh is in the proper area for the green contact zone of his bat, that is a tree branch, hits it so that you can get a home run off of her is very difficult. And, okay, so I figured out how to do that one. I ended up beating Kanga, and then I get to Rabbit. And what Rabbit does, he throws the ball and it goes super slow for 2 seconds, and then it's like a freaking missile.
Right. Speeds up right at the end. Gotcha.
Right
okay.
at the end. And also, as you go, like, it's not less than half. It starts to get closer and closer to half of the amount of pitches you need to be able to hit as a home run.
Right. Now, I have heard in the little bit of research that I did, because you threw this at me literally like an hour before we started recording, but the true like moment where this becomes a game that breaks people is Tigger. I have heard that Tigger is like the thing that really kind of gets people.
Why, that's because I throw my patented Invisiball.
Oh, God. I am not going to be able to sleep tonight with that voice in my head, but anyway.
Well, I've been working on it. So, yeah. So, you get to Tigger, and he throws the ball, and it's 2 seconds, and then the ball disappears. And it's invisible. And you just need to figure out, based on where the ball was when it disappeared, its trajectory and speed, so that you can hit it out of the park, so that you can swing your bat at the right time to get a home run.
And so, like, if you fail, I assume because it's a flash game, it's just back to the beginning, right? There's no save state or anything.
Okay,
like
so
that,
it does unlock the pitchers that you've beaten.
Okay.
It does have that ability. Once you defeat Kenga, you never have to hit hers again. You can choose to go back. So, yeah, you start at Tigger every time, but Tigger throws 40 pitches, and you have to hit 28 home runs off of those 40 pitches. And the worst part is, there's no way to quit once you've started.
Oh, okay.
So
the only way to win is not to play. I mean, like,
exactly.
Turn it off.
As soon as you miss 12, as soon as 12 balls are not home runs, well, 13 really, right? You can't hit the 28. You got to do it. But then it's also like, but this is a chance to practice. This is a chance for me to try to hit a home run and learn like how it works to play against Tigger.
Yeah.
And the highest I've gotten is 17. I don't know how I hit 17 home runs against Tigger with his patented Invisible, but I've done it. And I don't know, but it's one of those things where like I'm in it for the long haul now. I'm eventually going to do it. And one of the reasons
cookies or else that game will reset.
I know, right? I'm terrified. I shut off my computer not remembering and I'm like, "Oh, I'll have to get back to it." But like I would be fine trying to do that. But it is one of those things where like I started the challenge. And one of the reasons why I sprung it on you today is by all accounts, when I started it on Friday, I'm like, no, I started it Thursday. When I started it Thursday night, I'm like, I'm going to beat this game. I'm Devon Decker.
Mm-hmm.
And that was before I realized that like Tigger basically throws an invisible ball for like, just good luck.
Yeah. Wow.
And then Christopher Robin is the final one, and I don't know what he's throwing.
But this is the kind of shit that like like kids these days are never gonna understand. But like this is why when they said Flash is dying that we lamented, right? Like this is the kind of shit that you could get away with putting up there. I mean, is it Disney branded? Was it on like a Disney?
It was on Disney's website.
Yeah,
it's a Disney made Flash game for children.
You had a full on Disney embraced game that was, by all accounts, impossible to finish. I have not seen any footage from anybody that has finished this game that was not virtually assisted in some way. Everything was like save state assisted, like between each pitch, like that kind of shit. Like it was just, it sounds insane. And the fact that it was actually straight up Disney branded makes it even crazier to me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna do it. I'm not cheating in any way, shape, or form. I'm leveling up my character. I don't know if that's an issue, but I've almost leveled up my contact area to max. 100,000 more points, and I can have my contact area at the highest level, which means that there's a bigger area for me to hit the ball that's invisible. And like, I hope that's going to help, but I really kind of feel like it's not going to.
I mean, like, people talk about Dark Souls being the get good game, but apparently this is the motherfucker right here. And so, like, if you do this, you will be crowned king.
It is weirdly engaging every time, too. But I think what really broke me is the first time that Tigger threw that pitch at me, and it disappeared, and I swung, I hit a home run. So, like, what it did, like every time I tell the story of I got to a boss under-leveled or ill-prepared to fight that boss, almost every time that happens to me in a game, I'm able to do pretty good that first time.
Oh yeah.
And like it's enough for me to be like, all I need to do is like buckle down and give it some gumption, and I will be able to defeat this.
Oh, it's that first hit is free mentality, man. It almost makes you wonder how often, and this must happen at least every once in a while, how often it's worked into the RNG that your first time that you approach it, the numbers are a little bit better, but in your favor. But then after that, they dial it up, right? Because I can't tell you how many times I come up against that in these games. Like Undermine was exactly this way for me. Like I'd be going through Undermine and I would get to a quote unquote boss level, and I would feel good about it because I was like, oh yeah, like I'm under leveled, but as long as I jump and as long as I make sure that I'm doing this and I've got this blessing and I've got this weapon, I'm good to go. And then the next time I got there, I would just get wrecked, and I was just like, what did I don't know what I did different this time. And it is that attitude. Part of it makes me wonder if it's just because you're in the flow, but the other part of it makes me wonder if some of them are just designed that way. It makes you really feel like somebody planned for this.
I mean, if I had to guess, I think it's the confidence issue. Because like that first time when you knew nothing, you did a pretty good job. So then like you're confident that you can beat it. And as we've learned in most storytelling, hubris is the greatest weakness of all. So walking into a boss fight thinking, I got this, is the quickest way to fail. And actually, I'm glad we had this discussion, because now I think I know how to approach Tigger. And also...
Punch yourself in the nuts a couple of times first so you really feel small, and then just walk in the door.
Also, just to give you another thought to haunt your dreams, if and when Christopher Robin dies, all of the citizens of the 100 Acre Woods die with him.
Well, fuck. Good night, everybody.
No, I have other things. But they're quick things. We don't usually highlight games that are on like the Nintendo Switch Online program, but a game has dropped in the NES collection that I didn't believe that it had dropped, to be completely honest with you. Like, I heard about it and I'm like, that can't possibly be true, but it's true. It's a Japanese game that released in 1992. It's called Psycho Dream. And
man.
Dale was playing it, and I'm like, why are you playing Psycho Dream? She's like, it's on the Nintendo Switch. I'm like, oh, excuse me. Because I played Psycho Dream last August, got all the way to the final boss, and then, like, it was time to go, so I shut off the system, and I'm like, I'll never play this game again. And I buckled down and I finally completed it, and I have to recommend Psycho Dream to everybody. It's a very good game. And like, have you played it?
I am not good at it. I won't say that I've played it because I haven't gotten past like opening levels, but yeah, I've touched it.
Play as Maria, collect only yellow crystals.
Okay.
And that is my recommendation to you. I've never played it as Rio, and now that I've said those words, I feel like I have to.
Yeah.
Right,
but Maria's whole thing is that she's got, is it a Castlevania style whip? Is that like
she has a whip, and then if you collect a blue crystal, she has a laser. So she's very, like, she's sort of Metroidvania the character, if you want to think about it. But if you collect yellow crystals, she gets, like, the whip has more length and more strike points, to the point where when you fully level her up on that, she spins with her whip, and like that, you're kind of invincible when you do that. But also, once you level up the yellow or the blue to full, you can pick up a red gem, a dark red gem, and that gives you super mode, which is fully leveled up both yellow and blue, and you have fairy wings, which means that your jump is higher and you can slow your descent. The game is like, for a 6-level game, there's so much depth to it.
Oh man, I love the story. The Psycho Dream is the one that gets brought up all the time because of the VR element, but it's like you're going into a person who's dying in order to save them, right? Like, isn't that the whole? Yeah. It's a crazy ass story. Like one of the earliest examples of cyberpunkness in like kind of this setting. It's awesome. Yeah.
And I was so happy to see that it was released on the Switch Online program, and then I was so happy to finally complete it. So like huge recommendation. If you're paying for Nintendo Switch Online, you have Pac-Man 99, which is fun, and I got beaten by the guy who's #1 in the world. I got 3rd place against him. That felt pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. Also check out those and check out Psycho Dream. Don't worry about the Japanese. The only thing that's in Japanese is like the splash intro screen. Everything else like is you don't need to be able to read Japanese to play the game. Good. And you can get the lore online. So big recommendation on that. I'm playing Gradius. I need to tell you that, but just because I need a sponsor, because I could see myself going all Life Forcey with it.
Okay, all right.
But I am getting better with Gradius. I actually see a marked improvement as I play, where Life Force just kicks my ass every time I get to the 3rd level. Gradius, I'm making progress. So maybe. And then the last thing from me, final update, the hitbox is complete. It is a huge learning curve to play with it. So that's as Will called my greatest Everest for me to conquer right now.
I mean, you've played with sticks before, though, right?
I have played with sticks.
It's just this particular one's got some funk?
Well, it's all buttons. It's a stickless one, so and the idea behind it is that your 10 digits, each of them has a button to work with.
Interesting.
So it's like left index is right, left ring is left, and learning how to use them in tandem.
That's actually really interesting from an accessibility standpoint, because if somebody does not have, say, the grip power to work a joystick, knowing that they have the ability to play with something like this is really, really cool. That's rad. That's awesome.
Yeah. And you know, and the coolest thing about it is that it does work with my regular Super Nintendo. Using the Brooks Retro board, I was able to plug this thing that I built using all 2021 parts.
That means you could play Killer Instinct.
I could play everybody loves Killer Instinct. Also, apparently Free Play, another listener of the show, my friend Mark, said that Free Play in Providence has a Killer Instinct machine. So after the virus, next time you're East Coast bound, we should probably go to Free Play and see who's better at Killer Instinct.
Nice.
Let's put it on the books.
Excellent, man.
All right.
Yeah, that's right.
Anything else that you'd like to add? I think I've shared all my parts.
No, I mean the big push this weekend for me was to kind of get through that. I have not gotten far in it. I think I need to level up some characters, but I was gifted this weekend Scott Pilgrim, the game, a pretty fucking rad edition of it. Thank you for that, Dev.
You're very welcome.
I don't know if you know how fucking cool it actually is, like the version that you sent me. First of all, reversible cover, which not just like, oh, there's pretty art on the other side. Literally, they even have like back of the box reversibility as well. And so I reversed it immediately for some cool art. But then on top of that, it came with a holofoil collector's card, always rad. And then inside it had a faux ticket for their show, the Battle of the Bands. So like there's like all sorts of cool collectible stuff to go along with it. So like in addition to the fact that I also now have that for my Switch, a physical copy of Scott Pilgrim for my Switch, I also got a bunch of cool shit to go with it. So thank you for that. And yeah, still diving into it though. Oh, man, I forgot how kind of it feels like you're kind of like walking through mud for the first couple of levels of characters until you level them up. But yeah, man, good times with that.
Yeah, there's a reason like that to me felt like the predecessor to River City Girls. But like River City Girls just kind of learned from some of the mistakes of the Scott Pilgrim game, and also that game heavily inspired by River City Ransom, so it kind of makes sense how the imitator learned and then the real series built on that in modern times. I'm very happy to hear that you're enjoying it. I have an edition somewhere along the line. I don't know why I don't have mine yet, but I really do hope that we get to get some online with that one.
Yeah, man, that'd be
down
blessed.
the line. So
hell yeah.
You know, that's something for us to talk about later on down the line. But I am glad that I'm really happy that it delivered in that. I'm always nervous with the limited run stuff. I mean, I've gotten some things and generally I'm happy at the end of the day once it comes in, but like to place an order and then not know when it's coming,
Yeah, there's definitely been some stuff I've discovered because I've done a few limited run things now with them. Got my physical copy of Super Meat Boy and stuff like that. Uh, and I was nervous. Nervous is a great way of putting it. But so far I've enjoyed the hell out of anything that I've gotten from them when it's inevitably showed up. But yeah, man,
Well, I mean,
I don't doubt it.
I think what made me fearful is that Streets of Rage 4 ended up being like a 7. Like I'd forgotten that I ordered it by the time that it showed up.
Yeah.
I will just be honest about that. But then with Scott Pilgrim, I placed that order for you, and then like within 2 months, they're like, "Oh, it's going to be shipping out," and I'm like, "Oh, well, that's good, right?" Is this how it works? Like, did Streets of Rage get messed up because of the pandemic, and like
Maybe.
I didn't
Yeah, that's
realize
also
that?
possible. Well, yeah, because they weren't communicating with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Plus, they're setting up a physical shop that's opening up in September. It's going to be in North Carolina, so it'll be a schlep to get down there. But I am interested to see what they have on display, considering the pre-order nature of a lot of their stuff.
Yeah, the
Like, is
fact
it
that
going to
they're
be
like, we can only
overstock
print this
or?
if they can. That is interesting. We might have to make a journey. Maybe do an on the road episode.
I'd love to do it, and I got people down there. I got people down there in North Carolina that I'd also love to see. So three birds, one stone. I'm all about it. But it's
Nice.
definitely something to think about. They just announced today that like everything is official for the shop to be opening in September. So thank you for bringing up that. Like that worked. That was really cool synergy on a quantum cosmic level. Excellent.
Yeah, man. But yeah, no. Other than that, I'll hold tight to anything else for next week.
All right, excellent. I can do the same. So, if you would like to give Siegen all of your Scott Pilgrim versus the World tips, tricks, and sheets, you can get him on Twitter at Siege versus the World.
And if you want to send any cool rumors about what button sequences Devon needs to push in Mortal Kombat on his new fight box so that he can unlock Ermac, go ahead and hit him up at Devon D. Decker.
All right, so until next time, let's send it over to our own secret ninja Smoke. Will, bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Stephen Selwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.